Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Anne Reesom.
And I'm Edna. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
Finance Committee breaks for summer holiday after last-minute dash to clear backlog of funding requests.
Executive Councillor rejects calls to postpone submitting Chief Executive's political reform report to Beijing.
Israel vows to ignore international pressure to stop bombing Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The 8-hour-long Special Finance Committee meeting ended this evening, with lawmakers only able to approve 21 items from a backlog of funding requests, with 17 still outstanding.
Members speeded up the scrutinising of items that were pending approval, and a $1.6 billion proposal for the reconstruction of Queen Mary Hospital just managed to get the green light before time ran out.
The final Finance Committee meeting kicked off at 9 o'clock this morning, with Unionist lawmaker Wong Kwok-hing hoping members could speed up the analysis of over 30 items that were pending approval. Wong said to save time, members of his Federation of Trade Unions would not raise questions during the debate unless it was necessary. Today's progress at the Finance Committee was faster than yesterday's, as members tried to clear a backlog of government funding requests before the summer break. 5 funding requests, including a $1 billion undergraduate study subsidy scheme, a $349 million scholarship for students studying outside Hong Kong, and equipment for the 2016 population bi-census were passed in the morning. Speaking to reporters during the lunch break, Committee Chairman Yeung said it's not possible to arrange extra meetings, as some lawmakers will be out of town during the summer break. It was back to business after the 1.5-hour-long break. There was a sigh of relief from welfare recipients and public housing tenants. Members approved the government's funding request for an extra month's payment for Social Security recipients and a 1-month rent waiver for public housing tenants. The government's controversial plans to expand 3 landfills and build a massive incinerator failed to get approval. Outside the building, a group of protesters vented their anger at the landfill plans and threatened to get help from lawmakers if the government continues to pursue the idea.
Executive Councillor Fanny Law has rejected calls for Yeung to postpone submitting his political reform report to the National People's Congress Standing Committee. Justice Minister Yeung
and his predecessor Elsie Leung also think it's not wise to delay the Chief Executive's report, which they say will include the notion of public nomination.
While Chief Secretary Carrie Lam this evening promised to continue consulting lawmakers and academics even though the consultation period is over, to narrow differences over electoral reform. On Tuesday, Chief Secretary Carrie Lam will release the findings of the public views collected by the government during a 5-month consultation. But not much is expected from Lam's report, and despite its controversy, the idea of letting the public nominate candidates for the top job won't be excluded. At the same time, the Chief Executive will submit his own report to his bosses in Beijing. All eyes will be on Yeung's report, because it will be entirely up to him whether to include feedback from Occupy Central's unofficial referendum and the July 1st mass rally, since the 2 pro-democracy events were held after the formal consultation ended in May. The next step in Hong Kong's political reform is expected to start next month, when the NPC Standing Committee meets in Beijing and replies to Yeung's report. That reply will greenlight the rules for electing the next chief executive in 2017 by universal suffrage. In the meantime, Occupy Central activists have threatened to bring the central business district to a standstill if they're not satisfied with Beijing's decision on political reform. Some local academics have called on Yeung to wait and hand in his report in October instead, so that the public can work on reaching a consensus. Executive Councillor Fanny Law, however, thinks waiting a couple of months won't make much difference, and that Yeung should give Beijing his report sooner rather than later. No matter if you postpone it for 2 months or bring it forward by 2 months, it's the same, Law said. She explained that the sooner Beijing got back to us with the bottom line on how to elect Hong Kong's next leader, the sooner the public could focus on debating the practicalities of doing that, including how to form the nominating committee.
I think we need more focused discussion on what is permissible under the basic law. It really depends on what the wordings and the framework that the NPC Standing Committee will set.
Law added that the fundamental issue with the SAR's political reform was that the public did not trust the central government. She noted that many people were pushing for public nomination because they believed letting only a nominating committee pick chief executive candidates was undemocratic. Law called on the public to push the reforms forward by focusing the debate on how to form the nominating committee. Many pan-democrats, particularly radical parties and student groups, have repeatedly said they won't compromise on their demand that all voters get equal nominating rights. They fear that any other arrangement would allow the nominating committee to screen out candidates who do not toe the Beijing loyalist line. But Justice Chief Yeung said he believed the chief executive's report to Beijing would include the notion of the public nominating the SAR's next leader. Yeung agreed with Law that it was important to focus now on how the nominating committee would be formed. He also hoped the community could reach a consensus on electoral reform in a rational manner. Yeung's predecessor, Elsie Leung, who is now Deputy Director of the NPC's Basic Law Committee, said at a seminar this afternoon that it was a little premature to be criticising the government's or the chief executive's reform reports before they'd even been released. Still, Leung believes that both reports will include the civil nomination idea. The former Justice Minister doesn't agree that the chief executive should hold off on submitting his report because the electoral reform consultation has been conducted for months now and it's time to bring closure to it. Leung also believes that Beijing will take into account public opinion in conjunction with the administration's reports. The Catholic diocese, meanwhile, presented its 3 new bishops to the public today. One of them, Michael Yeung, told reporters that people would rise up against a government if they believed their dignity and rights were under threat, so there was no reason for the church to oppose civil disobedience movements like Occupy Central. While another new bishop, Joseph Ha, vowed to help any Catholics who were arrested for taking part in the Occupy Central protest, since it did not go against their beliefs. Health Chief Yeung Man says there's no timetable yet for when live mainland poultry imports will resume after the 4-month ban on the birds ended last month.
Ko explained today that a lack of consensus on poultry inspections between local and mainland experts has delayed the resumption date.
More than 20,000 birds were slaughtered in January after the discovery of the deadly H7N9 virus, forcing the closure of the Changshawan wholesale market for 3 weeks. The government then imposed a 4-month ban on mainland chicken imports in February to allow authorities to set up a segregation facility in Takuling, so they will be prepared for future outbreaks. The segregation site is now ready, and the 4-month ban ended on the 20th of June. But Health Chief Yeung Man says authorities are unable to set a date for the resumption of live chicken imports because a consensus has not been reached on the inspection arrangements for the birds. This follows mixed views of experts on the deadly H7N9 virus, as local experts believe the virus is of low pathogenicity to poultry, but highly pathogenic in humans.
Representatives of the Food and Health Bureau have met the officials of the mainland authorities on the 10th of July to discuss the arrangement for resumption of live poultry supply to Hong Kong. However, due to a lack of consensus between the experts of Hong Kong and the mainland, we have not been able to decide upon a date for resumption of live poultry supply to Hong Kong.
Ko said the human fatality rate of H7N9 is high and the source of infection comes from poultry. Therefore, there is a need to minimize the risk of infection with tighter inspections for the well-being of Hong Kong citizens. Ko added that communication between both sides will continue.
A study has found that many ethnic minorities feel their Chinese isn't good enough for them to fit into society.
With DSE results just around the corner, the researchers say they hope a new government program for ethnic minorities will help them enter local universities. Winner Wong reports.
Marvin is of Nepalese and Filipino ethnicity. Despite being able to speak fluent Cantonese, he has trouble reading and writing Chinese. He says he's worried this will stop him from getting into a local university, as he needs to get at least a 3 in the DSE exams. The Hong Kong Christian Service and City University recently surveyed 400 ethnic minority students between the age of 12 and 23. About 60% said they only possessed primary-level Chinese skills and were worried this may affect their performance in school and even bar them from getting into a local university. To tackle the problem, the Education Bureau is rolling out a program for second-language learners this coming school year. With 2 more days until the DSE results are out, students are bracing themselves for the outcome. Their main concerns are whether they'll get into their university of choice. This morning, Ng Tak Kei, president of the Hock Yao Club, reminded students it's not the end of the world if things don't go as planned. This year, 80,000 people sat the DSE exams, but there are only 15,000 university spaces available. Winna Wong, ATV News.
Overseas, the death toll from Israeli airstrikes in the Middle East has passed 120, with mainly civilians among the dead.
But Israel has vowed not to cave to international pressure to halt the operations or negotiate a ceasefire. Arthur Keola reports.
9 children were among those wounded in an Israeli airstrike on farmland in Gaza City. Witnesses said they were playing out in the open when the area was shelled. The death toll has steadily risen since airstrikes began shaking the city every few minutes since they began on Tuesday. Dozens of civilians are among the casualties. 2 disabled women were killed and 4 others injured when an Israeli tank shell hit a rehabilitation center east of the city. Despite the innocents being killed in the attacks, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to resist foreign pressure to halt the operations. Israel insists dozens of terrorists are among the dead. Its ambassador to the U.S. told lawmakers his country would actually take tougher action if it wasn't for its Iron Dome defense system, which protects Israel from Palestinian rockets.
If we had missiles landing in our cities at a much higher rate than they're landing now, if we had high casualties in Israel, then the demands for the government to take action, very forceful action, very quickly would be much greater. The Iron Dome actually gives the Prime Minister and the decision makers in Israel the time and space they need to effectively prosecute this surgical war against Hamas without taking much tougher action.
Protesters gathered outside the Israeli embassy in Washington to protest against the airstrikes. They accused the U.S. of helping fund the crisis.
They're allies! They're supporters! They're not in the homes of Palestinians! They're right here in the Pentagon and the White House!
Protesters also gathered outside the Palestinian embassy in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. To show their solidarity, they burned the Israeli flag. They are calling on Arab leaders to open borders for wounded Palestinians to receive treatment. Arthur Keola, ATV News.
Still to come on ATV's main news. Mainland tech experts warn that iPhones are snooping on their owners.
And NBA fans in Cleveland celebrate after LeBron James signals his return.
Love it? Say it. Discover the latest and the hottest trends in Japan. Feel the pulse of the vibrant and fabulous culture. JP Time TV, every Sunday night at 6:25.
Golden Globe is a stepping stone to an Oscar. How bad do you want it?
A friend in need is a friend indeed. Giving a warm hand to friends.
Steve, you're the reason everyone came here tonight. They need to hear you speak in person, from the heart.
Does that make things better or worse?
And I ate all of him.
I ate my father pig!
30 Rock, tomorrow night at 10. Battling for the MasterChef crown.
Difficult, challenging, but beautiful if he gets it right. It's a strange combination. But if it works, good.
Taking the challenge to make delicacies.
Oh, you're joking? I can't send that. Dump it now. It's absolute rubbish. I won't give it to the cats.
In this competition, only talent can stand out.
Time's up.
Gourmet Time. Celebrity MasterChef 7. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday night at 8:30.
最近有唔少意見都認為，香港與其花時間去擴建幾個堆填區，倒不如快快脆脆起返幾個俗稱焚化爐嘅轉廢為能設施吧啦。不如講下喺香港起一個基建嘅基本程序先啦。就好似喺石鼓洲興建嘅轉廢為能設施咁，由規劃工程去到投產，花咗足足22年。香港嘅3個堆填區陸續就會喺5年內爆滿，咁我哋何來又多幾個22年去等呢？
ATV World Channel, Amazing Summer. Traveling tells you how extraordinary the world can be.
Stay with remote tribes in Papua New Guinea.
Documentaries record historical events, but also warm stories.
Mr. Thompson is starting to rebuild her face.
Popular dramas add more enjoyment to your daily life.
We will not be abused anymore! Okay, cool. Your father died by my hands, and you will as well.
Embrace the coming amazing July.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control has admitted another case of mishandling of a deadly virus, the third in a month.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin has kicked off his 6-day tour of Latin America in Cuba. Arthur Kiola reports.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to Cuba ended with a meeting with former leader Fidel Castro. The meeting lasted about an hour, and the two discussed bilateral relations and international affairs. Putin earlier met Castro's brother and Cuba's current president Raul and announced a deal to waive 90% of the country's debt to the Soviet Union, worth $35 billion. The remaining 10% will be invested in education. Putin also revealed that discussions are underway for modernizing its ports and building a modern airport with its own cargo terminal. The two presidents also attended a wreath-laying ceremony at the Soviet Internationalist Soldier Mausoleum in the capital Havana. The U.S. government lab, which handles infectious diseases, has admitted mishandling deadly viruses.
Our influenza laboratory was preparing a less harmful strain of animal influenza for shipment to a partner laboratory. In the process, unknowingly, they cross-contaminated that strain with highly pathogenic H5N1 influenza.
As a result of the mistake, the transfer of all samples has been ceased until a thorough review is carried out on all safety procedures. The incident happened in May, but was only just discovered. An investigation is already underway on how more than 80 CDC staff may have been exposed to a live strain of anthrax last month.
What the events of the past couple of months have told me is that there's a problem, and it's a symptom of a broader problem of laboratory safety. And we need to stop, reassess, fix, and make sure that we do everything humanly possible to make sure that events like this never happen in the future.
And a week ago, the CDC announced it had found long-forgotten vials containing the smallpox virus, which was eradicated in the 1980s. The U.S. and Japanese defense chiefs have vowed to step up cooperation. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel hosted his Japanese counterpart, Itsunori Onodera, at the Pentagon. Hagel said he hopes Japan will be able to take a greater role in regional defense, having recently announced its decision to reinterpret its pacifist constitution to allow its military to go to war.
This bold, historic landmark decision will enable Japan to significantly increase its contribution to regional and global security and expand its role on the world stage.
The decision has the two sides now revising their defense relationship, with both stressing the importance of establishing constructive ties with China. Tommy Erdelyi, known worldwide as Tommy Ramone, has passed away at the age of 62. He was the last surviving member from the original lineup of pioneering punk rockers, the Ramones. The band were hugely influential and cult favorites from when they formed in 1974 all the way to their last show in 1996. Reports said Ramone had been undergoing treatment for bile duct cancer when he died. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
Robot manufacturers have been pouring into the mainland, where they say business is booming.
But first, in a technology wrap, Beijing labs have found that iPhones may be a security risk for their owners. Winner Wang reports.
A device hiding in your pocket may be tracking your every step, or so engineers in Beijing say. After connecting the iPhone to a computer, we were able to view some system directories that normal users cannot see, says Wang Jiajie, a researcher at a government technology security lab. We found a hidden directory with records of the user's locations at different times. Wang explained that if users turned on location services, a frequent locations function will tell them where they've gone the most and when. But Ma Ding from the People's Public Security University of China said that even when disabled, the phone continues to record the user's location, which is an information security risk. In Shanghai, the China International Robot Show attracted companies from around the world to show off their technical flair.
The numbers of robots are always kind of a little bit a secret. Our share is small, I can tell you as much, but I can also tell you that we tripled our output last year. That means we were basically growing much faster than the market.
Masatoshi Sano, president of Kawasaki Robotics, said turnover has nearly tripled in the past year, and he's confident in the Chinese market. The expo, which started on Wednesday and lasted 3 days, covered about 16,000 square meters and attracted more than 200 companies. The companies all said China has become one of the biggest markets for robotics and think there is potential for it to grow even larger. Winner Wang, ATV News.
Time now for sports with Raymond Yeung.
What have you got tonight?
Well, we've got some big news of an NBA superstar. After 4 years and 2 championships at South Beach, LeBron James is coming home to play for the Cleveland Cavaliers next season.
In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
In the summer of 2010, LeBron James announced he would team up with NBA stars Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade at Miami Heat, leaving his hometown team of Cleveland Cavaliers where he began his career. The decision berated many Cleveland fans who felt King James had betrayed them in pursuit of personal glory. After 4 years and 2 championships, James will now try to mend the soured relationship with his hometown supporters by rejoining the Cavs next season. In an open letter posted on the website of a U.S. magazine, the 29-year-old said, "My relationship with Northeast Ohio is bigger than basketball." And it seems the city of Cleveland is ready to embrace arguably the world's best basketball player.
Thank you, LeBron. You have done a wonderful thing for Cleveland. All is forgiven. We love you. Thank you very much.
I am so happy that LeBron's home. It's about time, 4 years in the making.
Everybody I've walked by has a smile on their face. It's one of the greatest moments in Cleveland.
So much hype surrounds James's homecoming that 12,000 season tickets for the Cavs were all sold out in 8 hours after the announcement. Excited fans even gathered outside his mansion in the usually quiet town of Bath, with police officers arriving to keep order. But the departure of James signals the end of the Big Three era for the Heat, who have reached the NBA Finals for the past 4 years, winning it twice. Turning to athletics, there was a shocking setback for sprinter Johan Blake, the 2012 London Olympics 100 meters runner-up. The Jamaican pulled out of the Diamond League meeting in Glasgow with a hamstring injury, as compatriot Nico Ashmead took the honours in just under 10 seconds. Blake, the second fastest man in history behind Usain Bolt, looked disappointed as he was taken away in a wheelchair. Panamanian Alonso Edward continued his strong run at the 200 meters, powering to victory in 20.25 seconds. women's race, Olympic gold medalist Francina McElroy held off compatriot Sanya Richards-Ross to clinch the 400 meters. Looking at golf, Zach Johnson has retained his lead after the second round of the John Deere Classic in Northern Illinois. The 2012 winner started strong with 7 birdies, but 2 bogeys later on dropped him into a tie with fellow American William McGirt at 12 under 130. There was a 4-way tie for 6th position at 9 under, with Steve Stricker carding a 6 under 66 to go into contention. Another 2 strokes off the pace is Jordan Spieth, who recovered nicely from the bunker to birdie his second hole on the back 9. And finally, in football, more than 25,000 soldiers and police officers have arrived in Rio ahead of the World Cup final on Sunday. Security is extra tight outside the Maracanã, where the showdown match between Germany and Argentina will be held. Dubbed as the biggest operation in Brazil's history, the city's security chief acknowledged the immense responsibility over the fans' safety and will take no chances in laying down blanket security. Meanwhile, Brazil's national heroes are trying to salvage a devastating semi-final defeat tonight when they take on Holland for the 3rd-place playoff in Brasilia.
And a look at the weather before we go. It was another hot and humid day with a mixture of sunshine, clouds and showers. Temperatures range from 28.3 to 33.6 degrees, while the relative humidity was between 67 and 92%. Winds were moderate coming in from the south and fresh offshore at times. Let's check on the ultraviolet reading. The maximum recorded for the day was 9. Tomorrow's UV index will be around 10. Now for a look at the weather in the region. An airstream from the south is affecting the coast of Guangdong. And now the satellite images. Showers are affecting the coast of Guangdong and the northern part of the South China Sea. Here's what we can expect over the next few days. There will be isolated thunderstorms at first tomorrow, mainly cloudy with sunny periods for the day. Temperatures will range from 28 to 33 degrees. Very hot again with sunny spells and showers on Monday and the next couple of days. Here are the latest pollution readings under the Air Quality Health Index. General stations are at 2 to 3, meaning the health risk is low. Roadside levels are at 3 to 4, so the health risk is low to moderate. Finally, here's the weather around the world.
That's the main news for Saturday night. We'll have an update in an hour. I'm Edna.
I'm Raymond.
And I'm Anne-Marie Sim. Thanks for watching ATV. Good night.
Good night.
Coming up, leisure time. Ramble round the 7 Guangdong Greenway.